Before I say a single word about what is happening inside your blood vessels, I need to be direct with you about something. Everything you are going to hear in the next 20 minutes is strictly for educational purposes. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice. It is not a diagnosis, and it should never lead you to change, stop, or adjust any medication your doctor has prescribed without speaking to them first. What it is the deeper, more honest conversation about your vascular system that a 15-minute insurance-driven appointment almost never has time to deliver. Now, let us begin. If you are 65 or older, I want you to sit with this for just a moment. The body you woke up in today is not the same body you were living in at 55. And I do not mean that in the abstract, motivational, you are getting wiser way that people say at birthday parties. I mean it in the hardest, most mechanical, most structurally specific way possible, because something happened to your blood vessels on the other side of that birthday. Something that most people are never told about clearly enough to actually understand. And the silence around it is costing millions of Americans something they can never get back. Here is what I want you to imagine. Your entire vascular system, the hundreds of miles of tubing that carries blood from your heart to your brain, your kidneys, your legs, the tips of your fingers, was once built like high-grade rubber hose. It was springy. It had give. When your heart beat and sent a surge of blood forward, those vessel walls stretched slightly to absorb the impact, cushioned the wave, and then snapped back, helping propel blood forward between beats. That spring, that snap, that bounce, it was not optional. It was load-bearing. It was doing a critical job every single second of every single day for 6.5 decades. And then you crossed 65, and the bounce started failing. What I just described is not a metaphor. It is a precise, documented, measurable structural shift that cardiovascular researchers have been tracking in aging populations for decades, including through one of the longest-running heart studies in American history. And it is not a gentle, gradual decline that gives you plenty of warning. For the majority of people, the rate of structural change in the vascular system accelerates dramatically after the mid-60s in a way that fundamentally changes the mechanical load placed on your heart and your brain. We are going to call it what it is, the 65-year structural cliff. And today, I am going to tell you exactly what is happening at the bottom of that cliff. Not because I want to frighten you, but because understanding it with precision is the only thing that gives you the power to do something about it. In this video, I am counting down the 5 specific mechanical reasons why 65 is the hardest stage your blood vessels will ever face. And I want to be very clear about what we are not doing today. We are not talking about eating fewer eggs. We are not talking about generic lifestyle tips you have read 100 times in a magazine waiting room. We are going into the actual structural biology, translated into language that a real human being can understand and act on. Before I begin that countdown, I want to ask one thing of you right now. Look beneath this video. In the comments, I want you to leave your age and type the word vitality in all capital letters. We are building a community tracking system here, and I am working on a companion protocol document designed specifically around the vascular challenges people in this age group face. When that document is ready, the people who typed vitality will be the first to have access to it. Do that now, and then come back to me, because number 5 is something that almost no one in mainstream medicine explains clearly enough, and it is the foundation of everything else on this list. The first structural change, the foundation of the cliff, is this. Your main arterial highway, the large central vessel that carries every single heartbeat away from your heart and distributes it to your entire body, has been losing its ability to spring back, and after 65, that loss accelerates in a way that changes the physics of your entire circulatory system. Here is the mechanical picture. Inside the walls of your major arteries, there are proteins called elastin fibers. Think of them as the actual rubber in your rubber hose. From the day you are born, those elastin fibers are gradually being cross-linked, calcified, stiffened by the cumulative effects of blood pressure, oxidative stress, and simple mechanical fatigue. For decades, your body compensates beautifully, maintaining reasonable flexibility. But the research is very consistent on this point. By the mid-60s, the reserve of elastin function that your body has been drawing down for 6 decades begins to run critically low. The walls of your arteries stop absorbing and cushioning the heartbeat. They start simply transmitting it, raw, unfiltered, at full force, downstream. What does that mean for you? It means your heart, which was designed to push against a system with give, is now pushing against a system that pushes back. Imagine swinging a door that is on a well-oiled hinge versus a door that has been bolted shut. Same force, completely different result. The heart muscle must work dramatically harder for the same output. Over months and years, that extra workload causes the heart wall to thicken, making it less efficient, less adaptable, and ultimately more vulnerable. The landmark research that has tracked arterial stiffness in aging Americans, using measurements of how fast a pressure wave travels through the arterial system, is remarkably clear. The stiffening of that central artery is one of the most powerful predictors of cardiac events and cognitive decline in adults over 65 that we have. It is not a side note. It is the main story. The second structural change is happening on the inner surface of every blood vessel in your body, and it is something I want you to picture very specifically. Imagine the inner wall of your artery is like a freshly plastered wall in a well-maintained home. Smooth, sealed, intact. Now imagine that over time, from high blood pressure, from blood sugar fluctuations, from inflammatory compounds circulating in the bloodstream, that wall begins to develop microscopic cracks. Fine at first, barely visible, but cracks in a wall do exactly what cracks always do. They let things in. In the case of your blood vessels, what gets into those cracks are oxidized fat particles, inflammatory immune cells, and structural waste products that the healthy sealed vessel wall would have simply deflected. Once those materials get underneath the inner lining of the vessel, the immune system, doing exactly what it is designed to do, sends repair crews to the site. And those repair crews, in the process of trying to patch the damage, lay down a hard, calcified filler that narrows the channel and reduces the pipe's ability to flex. This process, which researchers have studied in extraordinary detail in aging cohort populations over multiple decades, is not something that only happens to people who made bad lifestyle choices. It is happening to every human being over 65 to some degree. The question is the rate. The question is whether you are feeding the crack formation process every single day without knowing it, and we will come back to that. Now, the third structural change is one of the most underappreciated, and it is about a signal, a chemical signal, the kind that used to work beautifully when you were younger, and now, after 65, is falling increasingly silent. Your blood vessel walls are lined with a single, exquisitely thin layer of cells, and among the most critical jobs those cells perform is producing a molecule that acts as a natural pipe widening signal. When your body needs more blood flow, when you stand up, when you start walking, when your brain asks for more oxygen, those lining cells are supposed to release this molecule in response to the physical force of blood rushing past them. When it works, the smooth muscle in the vessel wall receives the signal, relaxes, and the pipe opens wider to allow increased flow. It is one of the most elegant engineering systems in the human body, and it was awarded a Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1998. After 65, this system begins to malfunction. The cells that produce the widening signal become less responsive. The physical trigger, blood flow, no longer generates the same chemical output. The result is that when you need your vessels to open up for activity, they do not open as wide as they should, as fast as they should. Your heart is working against the stiffened pipe. Your pipe is not widening when called upon, and you are now dealing with a compounding mechanical failure that leaves your tissues, including your brain, undersupplied precisely during the moments they need support the most. Research examining this signaling failure in older adults has consistently linked its decline to elevated resting blood pressure, reduced exercise capacity, and accelerating cognitive aging. And this is where I want to tell you about two people, and I want you to really listen to this. Margaret and Paul were both 67 years old. Both lived in the American Midwest. Both had received the same general message from their doctors. Your blood pressure is elevated. Here is a standard medication. Watch your salt. Come back in 3 months. Margaret took the pill. She watched the salt. She trusted that was enough. She had no idea that her vessel lining was sending failing widening signals that the medication was not addressing. She had no idea that her pipes were losing their bounce faster than the medication could compensate for. She dismissed the shortness of breath walking to the mailbox as just aging. She ignored the afternoon brain fog. She told herself the dizziness was from skipping lunch. By 71, Margaret had experienced a significant cardiovascular event. She survived, but she did not go home to her own house. She went to her daughter's. She has not driven since. Paul got the same medication at 67, but Paul also started asking different questions. He asked his doctor specifically about arterial flexibility. He started researching what actually restores the widening signal in blood vessel walls. He changed 3 specific things in his kitchen and 1 thing in his daily routine. He began tracking his blood pressure at home, morning and night, and brought those logs to every appointment. He did not treat his diagnosis as a managed condition. He treated it as a structural engineering problem that required structural solutions. Paul is 78 today. He drives himself to his weekly golf game. He maintains his own yard. He walks 45 minutes, 5 mornings a week, and his physician has described his current vascular flexibility measurements as genuinely remarkable for his age. Paul is not lucky. Paul was informed. The 4th structural change is the one that may be the most psychologically unsettling of everything on this list, because it is about how your own body begins to deceive you. Inside the walls of your major arteries, sitting at specific strategic points in the system, are pressure sensors. These sensors are designed to detect the pressure inside your arteries in real time and send constant signals to your brain about what is happening. When pressure gets too high, the brain responds by telling the heart to slow down and telling the vessels to widen. A continuous, beautifully calibrated feedback loop that has been maintaining your blood pressure in a safe range your entire life. But here is what happens after 65. Those pressure sensors, after decades of sitting inside increasingly stiffened arterial walls, begin to recalibrate. They literally reset their definition of normal. If your blood pressure has been running elevated for months or years, those sensors, embedded in the walls they are supposed to monitor, adapt to that elevated level and begin treating it as the acceptable baseline. The alarm that should be telling your brain, this pressure is too high, do something, goes quiet. Your brain stops fighting the elevation because your own internal monitoring system has accepted it as normal. This recalibration is one of the key reasons why chronically elevated blood pressure in older adults can go so long without generating obvious symptoms. It is not that nothing is happening. It is that your body has stopped sounding the alarm. The damage continues. The wall cracking continues. The stiffening continues. But the alert system that should be shouting at you to act has been lulled into silence by its own long-term adaptation. Researchers studying pressure sensing function in aging populations have documented this desensitization clearly, and it is one of the most compelling biological arguments for why monitoring your blood pressure yourself consistently at home, morning and evening, matters as much as any medication. And now we reach number 1, the structural reason that sits above all others on this list, the mechanical tipping point that most directly threatens the thing you are most afraid of losing, your ability to think clearly, to remember, to make decisions, to live independently on your own terms. When your large arteries lose their bounce, when that central arterial highway becomes a rigid glass-like pipe instead of a flexible, shock-absorbing one, the pressure wave that your heart generates with every single beat no longer gets cushioned before it travels downstream. In a healthy, elastic system, that wave gets absorbed, softened, and largely dissipated by the time it reaches the small, delicate vessels at the periphery of your circulation. But in a stiffened system, that wave travels all the way through, fast, forceful, and undiminished, straight into the most fragile vascular territory in your body, your brain. The microvasculature of the brain, the extraordinarily fine capillary network that delivers oxygen and nutrients to every neuron you have spent 70 or more years building, is not engineered to receive a high-force, high-speed pulsatile pressure wave with every heartbeat. Those microvessels are built for steady, low-pressure, smoothly flowing delivery. When the mechanical properties of the upstream plumbing fail and full-force pressure waves begin crashing into those fragile microvessels, the consequences accumulate silently and relentlessly. The walls of those microvessels thicken and stiffen in self-defense. The blood-brain barrier, the protective filter that controls what enters brain tissue, begins to leak. Tiny areas of reduced blood flow create microscopic zones of damage that show up on imaging as white matter changes, the structural footprints of a brain that has been under mechanical siege. This process, cerebrovascular pulsatility damage, has been the subject of intensive research over the past 2 decades, and the findings are stark. The rate at which high-force pressure waves penetrate the brain, microvasculature is directly and significantly correlated with the pace of cognitive decline in aging adults. Not potentially correlated, not possibly associated, directly and significantly linked. Memory loss, slowed processing, difficulty with executive function. the incremental, quiet erosion of the mental sharpness that lets you manage your finances, navigate your neighborhood, and live your life without help. This is the downstream consequence of a vascular system that reached the structural cliff at 65 and was never given the tools to climb back from it. This is why everything else on this list matters. This is why the bounce in your pipes is not a cosmetic issue. This is why the widening signal, the crack in the inner lining, the reset pressure sensors, none of them are standalone problems. They are interconnected chapters in the same structural story, and they all converge at the same final destination, the brain. So what do you actually do, right now, today, in your own kitchen and your own daily routine? The first priority is supporting the raw material your vessel walls need to restore and maintain flexibility. Your arterial walls require specific structural building blocks to remain pliable, and the most critical are the omega-3 fatty acids found in cold water fish, wild salmon, mackerel, sardines, anchovies. These fats directly incorporate into the cell membranes of your vessel wall cells, improving their mechanical compliance and supporting the production of anti-inflammatory compounds that slow the crack formation process. 2 to 3 servings per week of fatty cold water fish is the pattern consistently associated with measurable improvements in vascular health markers in older adult populations. The second priority is restoring the widening signal, the molecule I described earlier, the one your vessel lining produces less of after 65, can be meaningfully supported through 2 specific dietary strategies. First, increasing your intake of inorganic nitrates from dark, leafy vegetables. Arugula, beet greens, spinach, and beets themselves are among the richest sources of the dietary nitrate your body converts into the natural pipe-widening molecule through a pathway that remains functional even when the vessel lining production pathway has declined. Research in hypertensive older adults has documented clinically meaningful reductions in blood pressure from consistent, moderate intake of these nitrate-rich vegetables, not as a supplement, but as food. Second, adding cocoa flavanols, specifically from high-percentage dark chocolate or unsweetened cocoa powder, has been shown in multiple controlled studies to measurably improve vessel lining function in adults over 60 by directly stimulating the enzyme responsible for producing the widening signal. The third priority is eliminating the hidden everyday irritants that are accelerating the crack formation process in your vessel lining. The 2 categories to remove from your regular food supply are industrial seed oils, the refined corn, soybean, cottonseed, and sunflower oils found in nearly every packaged and restaurant-prepared food, and any product listing high fructose corn syrup in its first 4 ingredients. Both of these, when consumed regularly, generate oxidative and inflammatory compounds in the bloodstream that directly target and damage the inner vessel lining, feeding the very crack formation process we discussed at position 4 on our countdown. Replacing those oils with extra virgin olive oil, which contains naturally occurring anti-inflammatory compounds that have been studied in Mediterranean aging populations for decades, is one of the most structurally meaningful swaps an older adult can make. The fourth priority is consistent movement, and I want to be specific about why this matters mechanically, not just metabolically. When you walk at a brisk but comfortable pace, the kind where you can still hold a conversation, but you are definitely working, the physical force of blood flow past your vessel lining cells directly stimulates the enzyme that produces the natural widening signal. You are, in effect, manually triggering the signaling system that your body's automatic version has begun to fail. 30 to 45 minutes of brisk walking 5 days a week has been shown in aging cohort research to measurably improve vessel flexibility and reduce arterial stiffness over time, not as background noise, but as a primary therapeutic mechanism. If you are starting from inactivity, 10 minutes is not nothing. 10 minutes is where you begin. And fifth, monitor your own blood pressure at home consistently. Morning before your medication, evening before bed. Log the numbers, not obsessively, but persistently, because what you track, you can manage, and what you never measure, you cannot defend. Before I let you go, I need to ask something directly of you. If what you heard today felt different, if it gave you a more complete picture of what is actually happening inside your vascular system than anything you have heard in a standard appointment, please subscribe to this channel right now and turn on the bell notification. The information I am producing here is based on real research, real biology, and a deep respect for your ability to understand and act on complexity. When you turn on that notification, you ensure that what I create reaches you directly, instead of being filtered out by an algorithm that has no idea what your health actually needs. This is your circulatory system. This is your brain. You should be in control of what information reaches you about them. The conversation we had today, the 65-year structural cliff, the failing bounce, the cracking inner lining, the silent widening signal, the pressure sensors that have stopped sounding the alarm, and the mechanical wave crashing into your brain's most fragile vessels. This is the foundation. In the coming videos, we are going to build on every piece of it. We are going to talk about the specific role of overnight blood pressure in accelerating or slowing the brain microvascular damage process. We are going to talk about the one measurable marker of arterial age that your doctor can order, but almost never does. And we are going to talk about a daily movement pattern backed by specific longitudinal research that has shown the ability to actually reverse measurable arterial stiffness in adults who start after 65. You crossed a structural threshold when you passed 65. That is not a reason for despair. It is a reason for precision, for knowing exactly what is happening and exactly why it matters. Because the people who thrive in their 70s and 80s and beyond are not the people who were simply lucky. They are the people who understood what was happening inside their own bodies and chose to respond with intelligence, with consistency, and with the right information. That is why you are here, and that is exactly what I am here to give you. I'm Dr. David Thompson. I'll see you in the next video.